All right. I'm going to go ahead and start admitting our guests and just do the little welcome, and I'll give you guys the sign when it's time to begin. All right. Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone who's joining us. I think you're all coming in on mute. We're going to be getting started in a couple minutes. We'll just give it a second for people to be welcomed in. And we'll be getting kicked off very shortly. I'll give it like one more minute and then we'll get kicked off because I want to be able to use most of our time on the matters at hand. Hey, Cindy, nice to see you. All right. We're a minute past, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. And Lindsay, I'm going to hand over responsibility to admitting new guests to you.
I'm on it. Got it.
Thanks very much. Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend some of your time with us this afternoon. I see some familiar faces, but for those of you who are new, I'd like to say just a couple of quick words about the Cyber Guild. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to activating cybersecurity leaders and in advancing women in cyber through education and community building. Facilitating discussions like the ones that we're having here today is a big part of how we do that. Today's session is all about how workforce leaders are shaping cyber talent in the age of AI, and we have a wonderful and intelligent panel to bring light to this very important topic. A couple of really quick housekeeping things before we jump in. We want to keep this very interactive, so we invite you to please stay on mute. If you do have a question, you can use the raise your hand feature or you can drop it in the chat, whichever is more comfortable. We will pause and allow you to unmute yourself if you do want to speak your question out loud. So that is an option. And now I just want to take a very quick moment to introduce today's moderator and the founder of FourOne Insights, Will Markow. Will has spent his entire career at this intersection of workforce data and real-world impact. He is an internationally recognized expert on the future of work. He's testified before Congress on growing cybersecurity talent pipeline, and his research has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and CNBC, just to name a few. If you've ever used cyberseek.org, you've already benefited from his work. He spent 12 years at Lightcast building and leading their workforce research team, and he founded FourOne Insights to do something that most firms don't actually do. Equip organizations, educators, and communities with the data they need to prepare for where work is going, not where it's already been. Will's firm brings deep subject matter expertise and world-class labor market data together in a way that makes the abstract concrete. So I'm very excited to have Will lead us in today's discussion. Over to you.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I really need to have you introduce me on all my calls. I think you do a better job of describing what we do than I do. So thank you for that. But it's really wonderful to be here today. This is the second in a series of conversations that we're having with the Cyber Guild to really try to unpack how AI is impacting the cybersecurity workforce. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of hyperbole about this topic. And so we're trying to talk to folks both on industry side as well as the academic and certification and assessment side to really try to uncover what AI is truly doing to the workforce and what we should be doing to help prepare for it. So I'm thrilled to be joined by an all-star set of panelists today who will be able to share their insights from the academic and assessment side of the talent equation in this conversation. So I will give everybody a few quick moments to introduce themselves so that they can share with you their background and where they are coming to this conversation from. So I will start in the order of how I see you on my screen. So Dree, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. And thank you to the Cyber Guild for inviting me on this panel. Thank you, Will, for moderating. And thank you to my fellow panelists. It's great to be in this community. I am the executive director of the Center for Cyber Safety and Education, and we are the charitable arm of ISC2. So if you're familiar with ISC2, which I hope you are, ISC2 is the leading member community for cybersecurity professionals. And if you're not familiar with ISC2, then I'm sure you're familiar with the CISSP credential. And so we are the charitable arm of ISC2, and we exist to advocate for the cybersecurity profession, grow the cybersecurity profession and its positive impact on the world by raising awareness, building a diverse pipeline of cybersecurity professionals, and activating a more secure digital world. And we are driving towards one big North Star, and that is a cybersecurity profession where everyone has access and can thrive. And I'll tell you where I come to this conversation. I come to this conversation because I've spent a career in workforce development for emerging professionals and for individuals who have historically faced significant barriers to accessing the workforce, to accessing the proper training, and to accessing the opportunities that many other folks have. And so it is extremely important in this growing industry and in this changing industry and in this incredibly important industry that we take the lead in solving this problem so that, again, we can build towards that cybersecurity profession where everyone has access and can thrive.
Cool. And I'll pass it over to Jeff.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Jeff Welgan. I'm the CEO of SkillRex. What we do at SkillRex is really focused on cyber workforce intelligence, really understanding what's needed within the workforce for the roles any organization has employed, and then kind of where people are in those roles so we can bring that data to those decision makers so they can make smarter decisions around their workforce strategies. My background, I'm Intel by trade. I've spent well over a decade, well over a decade in the intelligence space, but I also spent about an equal amount of time in the training and development space as well. So, as a CEO of SkillRex, forming this company, we're really merging those two worlds together to bring all kinds of information to those decision makers and look at that data in very complex but meaningful ways so that we can be smart about our approaches and our strategies for very complex professions. So just honored to be here with my fellow panelists and again with you, Will, and I look forward to today's conversation.
Terrific. And I'll pass it over to Bill now.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Bill Butler. I'm Vice President of Outreach and Partnerships for Cyber Science at Capital Technology University. So I'm in the higher education space. I didn't start here. I began my career in the military and retired and went into the contractor community and somehow ended up in education and been an educator for about 22 years now, both part-time and full-time. So my responsibilities span from making sure that students from middle school all the way up to graduate school and in those age groups are aware of the careers that exist here and the opportunities that they have. So I could have days where I'm talking to a CTE class in a middle school, all the way to advising graduate students on what research they should do. And all of this has to do with workforce and preparing these students or career changers for the economy that is changing before our eyes. We are trying to prepare them for some of the skills that we can teach them in higher ed or in enduring, and it prepares them to address the change. So, and that's what this panel is about. Not only do we have a shortfall of folks who are going into these critical positions, but we have a shortfall in terms of the skills that the existing workforce has. So a lot of my colleagues are involved with helping employers upskill their existing employee base, but also to address those young folks who are coming up who need to be aware that there are tremendous opportunities, but you have to prepare yourself. Thanks.
Well, thank you again, Bill, and the rest of the panelists for joining. I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation given the perspectives that you all will be able to bring to this discussion. So really looking forward to it. But before we dive in, I just want to take a couple of minutes to set the stage and share some of the research that we've been producing at FourOne Insights on this topic of how AI is impacting the cybersecurity workforce, as well as recap some of the things that we heard in our last conversation. We spoke with leaders in industry so that we can use that to help frame this discussion around what we can be doing on the training and assessment side of the equation to help prepare people for the new realities of an AI-powered cybersecurity workforce. So I will go ahead and pull up a few slides and let me know if you can see my screen all right. Should be up. Great. So, as I mentioned at the outset, there has been a lot of hype, a lot of hyperbole, and a lot of uncertainty about how AI is actually impacting the workforce. You have some people who are the AI doomsdayers, and then you have some people who are far more optimistic about the impact that's going to have on the workforce. But yes, 10 different people, you probably get 11 different answers in terms of how AI is going to impact the workforce. But the one thing that we can say definitively is that this is the fastest we have ever seen a new technology be adopted across the workforce. In the roughly 15 years that we've been tracking the workforce, both in cybersecurity and beyond, we have never seen a new technology grow as rapidly as AI has just in the past couple of years. Now, over the past 15 years, there was definitely some AI-related capabilities out there, but demand significantly was far below what we were seeing in other emerging fields, such as data science, such as cybersecurity, such as cloud. But in just the past 2 years, AI-related skills have dramatically increased in terms of just how frequently employers are requesting them across a variety of different job openings. And what we now estimate is that across the workforce, about 14% of traditional workflows have been either automated or augmented by these new AI capabilities. And in cybersecurity specifically, that number jumps up to between 17 to 26%. So as high as roughly a quarter of traditional cybersecurity work is now being either automated or augmented by AI in some capacity. And so on the one hand, you could say, well, that's actually good news because the vast majority of work is still being done by humans. We're probably not going to be seeing this job apocalypse anytime soon. But on the other hand, you can also say that this represents a significant shift in terms of how work is being done and the types of technologies and tools that are needed to perform the same type of work that we were performing just a couple of years ago. And that is a significant level of disruption for incumbent workers, as well as training providers, students, and other folks who are trying to remain relevant within this ever-shifting landscape. And as a result of this rapid growth in AI-related technologies, this is bleeding over and impacting the skill sets that our cybersecurity workers need to have. In just the past 2 years, roughly, we've seen nearly a quarter of key skill requirements in cybersecurity job openings have shifted, and much of that evolution is being driven by AI-related skills that are increasingly being demanded across a broad swath of cybersecurity roles. In some cases, we've seen demand grow for these skills over 200 to 600% in just a couple of years' time. And that essentially presents a moving target for individuals as well as training providers who are trying to figure out how to remain future ready in this environment. At the same time, these skills are not only growing fast, but they're significantly undersupplied in many cases, and they're commanding a strong salary premium. I think Bill already referenced this in his opening remarks, but what we're seeing is that in some cases, we're not coming close to having enough available workers who have these skills that employers are increasingly requiring related to AI as well as other emerging capabilities. And they can command salary premiums in the $10,000, $20,000, in some cases even $30,000 or more range just for those one sets of skills. Now, while that's bad news for employers because it drives up costs, that is an opportunity for individuals as well as training providers who can bake some of these skills into their curriculum to help people learn some of these high growth, undersupplied, and high value skills. But in order to figure out how we can actually do that in practice, we also have to be talking with industry. And so that was the point of the first in this roundtable series when we talked to a number of industry leaders about how AI is really reshaping cyber teams and workflows within their organizations. And there were a few key findings that came out of that discussion. I think the first is that AI skills, they're not optional anymore. We are long past the evolution or tinkering phase with AI, and virtually every cyber team at this point has adopted AI technology in some capacity. Now, I would argue that probably was happening well before generative AI burst on the scene, but that has certainly accelerated the adoption of some of these AI capabilities. But at the same time, we also heard these leaders say that human expertise, it's important. And we have to be able to pair knowledge of these new AI tools with domain expertise and domain knowledge, as well as critical thinking skills that enable us to ensure that AI is leveraged in high value use cases. Which was the third thing we heard, which is that we have to be able to figure out how do we actually tie AI to real value creation. There are a lot of, I would argue, boondoggle use cases out there leveraging AI that really aren't tied to some of the highest leverage opportunities for that technology. And so what we heard from industry leaders is that individuals must be able to identify where AI can be deployed so that it will have the biggest impact on true drivers of business value. And then the last thing we heard is that although human expertise is still needed, AI is starting to compress the talent pipeline by removing some of the entry-level opportunities that historically were the training ground for people to gain that domain expertise and contextual knowledge that's really needed to be able to leverage AI as effectively as possible. And so this, I think, creates a chicken and egg problem where we're going to have fewer entry-level opportunities, but still a strong demand for those experienced workers with those high-value skills and domain expertise. And if we don't figure out how to expand entry-level opportunities again, then it's going to lead to long-term talent pipeline challenges. So those were some of the key things that we heard from industry. And now today, I'm excited to be able to continue this conversation with the other side of the talent equation, folks on the education, training, and assessment side. And so really want to use that as a good segue to open up the conversation and start to hear from some of the panelists that we have on this call about what they're seeing in this space as well. And so I'd love to start with Dree, actually, because I know that you have done a lot of work as well at IC Squared, producing research on the cybersecurity workforce, and in particular, how AI is starting to be adopted across organizations. And so I wonder if you could maybe also share some of the things that you all have been seeing in your research about how AI is impacting organizations and the implications for individuals and others in the space who are trying to remain future ready in this brave new world.
Absolutely, Will. Thanks. So ISC2 does on an annual basis a workforce study, the cybersecurity workforce study. And the reason we have the opportunity to do this big study is because we represent 270,000 members across the globe. And so this is a pool of professionals across the globe who are at various levels and various stages of their career and can really, from within organizations and from within the actual practitioner space, be able to talk about the things that they're seeing in their professional practice within their companies and so on and so forth. And so the 2025 ISC2 workforce study asked a lot of questions about AI, as we should have. And we found that AI skills represented some of the most pressing skills needs. And so 41% of participants who reported at least one of the skills needs for their security teams reported AI as a top skill need. And, kind of echoing your insights, Will, AI was kind of seen as a catalyst for career development and for this evolution of the field into a different way of work, and not necessarily a complete transformation or, a change in the people doing the work. So the foregrounding of human judgment was still really, really important. But at the same time, 73% of those individuals said that AI will create more specialized cybersecurity skills, and 72% of those respondents said that AI would create the need for more strategic skills, right? So again, thinking about human judgment and how human judgment can pair with some of these processes and these efficiencies that AI can potentially create. And then, we also know that cybersecurity practitioners are trying to stay current, right? And so they're seeking out the education. More than half of participants indicated that they were staying current by building their overall cybersecurity knowledge, but that many more were trying to strategically gain skills in the realm of AI in order to facilitate this transition and to keep up with the pace of change. And what we know to be true as well is that it's not just the skills of these AI tools, but of also securing AI. And so it's a both and of how do you grapple with AI creating opportunities for you to do your work well, and how do you also grapple with AI creating opportunities for adversaries to do their work well. And so, we're seeing, as you say, Will, a gradual adoption of those cybersecurity tools, those AI tools, and we're in the phase of within organizations where those tools have been adopted, and professionals are trying to figure out how do we do this well and how do we best integrate this into our process. And so 28% of respondents have already fully integrated AI into their operations, but many are testing, and many are evaluating exactly how this is going to look for the future and where it fits, where it's going to add value, and where it does not fit, and where we need to think differently about how we leverage this new technology. Um, and then, just to double click on this kind of early career cybersecurity professionals, the research suggests, as we all know, that some of these basic business practices, these strategic business practices, still remain important. How are we hiring for skills? How are we evaluating and assessing the skills that are needed given the context of this new technology? How are we thinking about some of those durable skills, power skills, soft skills, whatever your term of art is, and making sure that people come in with that problem solving, that collaboration and communication? And then, of course, how are we as organizations collaborating with our partners, like partners in higher ed, to make sure that for those emerging professionals, we're able to really articulate this is what you need to succeed, and this is how we can collectively help you to get there. And you can check out the 2025 cybersecurity workforce study as well. So there's more there, more insights, but this is just a taste of everything that we've discovered so far.
So I think that was a fantastic, framing of some of the, I would describe it as frothiness that we're seeing in the market right now, because there's still a lot of uncertainty around, what direction AI is going to take in many teams, and what the implications are for the skills that individuals are going to need as a result. And so I think, Jeff, I might pick on you a little bit here and get your thoughts, because I think you bring a very interesting perspective from the work that you do helping organizations actually assess what skills their teams currently have, and compare that against what skills they're really going to need. And so I'm curious, based upon the work that you're doing with organizations, how are you seeing companies first try to identify and assess what skills they have and what skills they need, but then secondly, how is that evolving, and how in particular is AI starting to shift the types of skill needs that you're seeing organizations put the most emphasis on?
Yeah, great. I appreciate that opportunity. I think one of the biggest problems that we see, as a company who works closely with large commercial and other organizations, is that there is this huge visibility problem. We've talked a lot about the talent gap issue for probably a good decade or more, and in talking a lot with you, Will, and really we're starting to see that change a little bit, right? There is a lot of surplus of talent. It's just kind of where that talent is needed, with a more focus on the mid to senior level roles, while we have an oversupply of younger talent or less experienced talent that's kind of in the wings. And we've also kind of seen the shift move from that talent gap conversation to more of a skills mismatch conversation. But you can't really address the skills mismatching until you actually have visibility into, well, what skills are needed. And of course, there are frameworks out there that we leverage to kind of help us understand what skills, tasks, knowledge areas are needed for certain roles, but that's kind of only a starting point. So one of the things that we see as a good best practice, something that we definitely use at SkillRex, is you want to kind of do that individual job role, title, level analysis for your own organization, leverage those workforce frameworks to help you out with that, but then kind of, add your own flavors to it, because a vulnerability manager at JP Morgan Chase is probably a different breed, different kinds of skills and tasks than your vulnerability manager maybe at a smaller or regional bank, right? Because maybe they have to wear a little more hats. They have to have some GRC components on top of the vuln management stuff. So really taking that organization specific piece is really good best practice to really understanding, well, what skills specifically do we want here at our organization? As we shift into this conversation around AI and how that's changing the game, some of those skills are certainly, being eroded, and some are kind of being propped up even more. Dre had mentioned, power skills and soft skills. I think we can't underestimate the power of those power skills in this new AI revolution, if you want to call it that, where we rely so much on the technological solution, but we are still humans in the loop, and that human in the loop process is really needed. It's not to a point where you can just trust the model to give you what you need. You do need that human check on top of it to make sure that it's refined and perfect, for whatever task that you're trying to perform. And, I don't know about anybody else here, but I've certainly come into using generative AI and seen myself spin a lot and being in a doom prompt cycle trying to get the perfect kind of answer or the perfect email out. So I do think and I want to talk a little bit about this more, but that while companies are really focused on AI adoption for various roles and still figuring out, well, what kind of AI do we need to leverage, or what kind of tools or generative AI or AI models even that we need to use across our enterprise and for these specific teams, they are really focused on the adoption of those tools right now and the usage of those tools. But there will be a big shift in the future towards efficacy, where I don't spend 20 minutes doing a doom prompt loop, that I can get it right within 2 prompts or get it right on the first prompt. And that will be the new, standard, I think, for, understanding and utilizing or having AI specific skill sets in some capacity, at least when we're talking about generative AI, for a variety of different work roles. I think that will be the new standard of kind of what's successful for those organizations.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying you don't think token maxing is going to be a thing for much longer.
Nope. It's important now because everyone wants, it's like a drug, use Chat GPT, use Claude. But we're seeing, obviously, to compete and keep up with the usage of that technology, you have to build data centers. And we need more data centers to handle the capacity, the load capacity of all all that usage. At some point, that tokenization will become a valuable supply and a limited supply. So, if you are overusing it as an employee, like next year when they start to raise the price of tokenization on all these companies, it won't be about just using the tool and can you use generative AI, but can you use it really effectively? And I think that is where we're going to be moving towards over the next 12 months is, that efficacy of usage, not just the adoptability of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that definitely comports with what we were hearing from industry as well about the need for not just, new technical skills, but also some of those, what I call, value creation skills and those human durable soft skills, whatever you want to call them. And so, Bill, I'd love to get your take on this because, you're coming at this from the training provider side. And, we're hearing that there's this shifting landscape. There are new skills that are needed across both the technical side and the non-technical side and the human side. And, from an educator's standpoint, how do you try and remain as adaptive as possible with your curriculum and with your programming to ensure that your students are coming away with the skills that are going to be most valuable in this ever-shifting ecosystem? And what are some of the steps that you all have taken specifically to try to address these changing realities?
Yeah, some of the things we've done across academia with the support of our partners, National Science Foundation and NSA, and some other federal agencies and organizations like ISC Squared. Some of the efforts that we're taking, of course, like I said, I've been in classrooms with middle schoolers learning how to program in Python, and as they began to go on their early machine learning, which I was glad to see that. I wish I had had that when I was that age. But what we're doing in a broader sense, our role as educators, some of our curricula can be used for training, and we are doing that. There are some professionals who just need to come in and retool, and some of it in this room are in that business because they want to remain relevant in this economy, whether you're coming out of high school, out of college, community college, technical, whatever you're coming out of, you got to remain relevant in this AI-driven economy. We don't even understand this economy yet. It kind of reminds me of the early days of the internet back in 2000, where we had no idea what was going on, but it was happening all around us. So we got to prepare for that. So some of the things that I want to tell you about was we work with the NICE framework developed by Department of Commerce. It defines well-defined work roles. We work directly with them as educators to make sure that our curricula aligns with those work roles because we know that some federal agencies and private sector companies do use a nice framework, and we want to align with that by preparing students to perform tasks within the confines of a work role. So students will come in and say, "Hey, I want to be a pen tester." Or everybody wants to be a red teamer, right? But we know they can't do that yet. But anyway, we tell them how you get there, and prepare them to perform the tasks that you perform on that job. We also work with industry, with HR departments. I kind of mentioned this the other day. We got to educate HR. What do you really need to know to do that job? Not just a bunch of requirements that you copied and pasted from another job posting, but what's really needed. So hiring managers and the managers in the operating sections got to talk to each other and make sure that we don't frustrate the job market with some of the things that are going on. Some of the other things that are happening, there are scholarships. The scholarships that National Science Foundation and NSA have been awarding for years to try to build a cyber workforce in the federal space are now shifting to AI. They were all cybersecurity at one time, and now they're AI. So we have shifted the type of students that we're looking for, which is going to shift how you got to prepare yourself in high school and middle school and community college to compete for these types of scholarships. And they're very lucrative. They're all expenses paid rides for 2 years or 4 years, and you have a job at the end of the rainbow. So what's there not to like about that? So my message, like I said the other day, was we need closer coupling between the education training space and industry. We can't give you what you want if we don't know what you want. You've got to come spend some time with us. We got to spend time with you. Get on our advisory boards. Volunteer your scientists and your engineers to come into education spaces and lend your expertise. You can see what's going on. We can learn from you what you really need. So that's my biggest advice. Give scholarships to your employees to go back and retool, whether it be training, certifications, or that college degree. But you got to be more active than you are now. Thanks.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're definitely advocating for a strong collaboration across different stakeholders in the ecosystem, which makes sense. You can't prepare people for jobs you know nothing about, and if you're not getting signals from employers, then you're not going to learn about those jobs. So, I know, Dree, a lot of the work that you do really sits at, I think, the intersection between different stakeholders in this ecosystem. I'm curious, to get your thoughts on, what do you think really makes for meaningful collaboration across stakeholders. I think we often hear that term thrown out, like, we should have industry and academic collaboration. But what does it actually look like when that's done well? And what are some of the recommendations you would have for leaders who are listening in about how to try to facilitate some of those higher value collaborations?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is an important thing that I think across all industries people are trying to solve. And there's good intermediaries out of across the board who are trying to help facilitate some of those collaborations. The center being one. One of the major collaborations that we currently have going is the 50 by 50 initiative. The global 50 by 50 initiative is focused on diversifying the entire cybersecurity space, the entire cybersecurity landscape, and that's how we first got connected to the Cyber Guild as well, because we know that different perspectives are necessary on cybersecurity teams. And so we need to be sure that more people are in the conversation. And our objective is to put 50% women into the cybersecurity workforce by 2050, which means bringing everybody along. Why do I give this example? Because it also means bringing along industry, academia, and nonprofit organizations who are functioning in their various capacities and ensuring that everyone talks to each other without the, potential combativeness or, what if you get this collaboration and we don't get this collaboration sort of dynamic, right? And so understanding that we're all on the same team is a really, really great start to making sure that these collaborations function well. The other thing that I will shout out is, kind of smaller collaborations in your local communities. So we work with a partner, they're called CAPS Network, and they have affiliates across the entire country. And CAPS Network does profession-based learning for K to 12, so middle school and up, right? And they work in Salt Lake City, their affiliate does essentially like a cybersecurity consulting service for nonprofits and businesses, which is very similar to a program that we have at the center. And they place, these kind of young people in a kind of advising capacity with these nonprofit organizations. These young people are partnered with a business. And so because they're partnered with a business, they're getting that mentorship. They're developing those direct skills on the ground, and all of this counts towards their education. And because that business is super integrated into what the school district is doing, what the classroom is doing, what the teachers are doing, they get that collaboration, and they get that really strong structure of everybody's on the same team. And so understanding that there's no competition because in the end we all succeed together or we all fail together, and that if we do this well, everybody's going to have a more skilled workforce. Everybody's going to understand what the skills are that are necessary, and all boats are going to rise.
Yeah, I love the rising tide approach to trying to build the cybersecurity ecosystem like that. And I think I definitely agree that these types of collaborations across stakeholders do benefit everybody. We've also seen it in some of the research that we've done that it's not just good for individuals when organizations are working with other partners to invest in their people. It's good for the companies and their bottom lines too. We actually produced some research earlier this year with women in cybersecurity that found that organizations that really took a skills first and talent friendly approach to helping invest in their people could save as much as $127,000 per worker over the course of that worker's lifetime with their cybersecurity team. And so, I think there is real value there for employers, but sometimes we find that employers don't always see the value immediately. And so, this question really both for Jeff and Bill, curious to get your thoughts on how you can help demonstrate the ROI to employers of investing in their people and engaging with training providers and others across the ecosystem to help grow the cybersecurity workforce, build a more resilient workforce, and a more adaptive workforce just in this age of AI. And how do you help to make that case to employers that it's also in their best interest to be part of the solutioning?
Yeah, I can jump on that first. As the visibility guy in this conversation, if you're not measuring things, it just doesn't exist. If you can't quantify things, there's no way you can measure return on investment on any program. So having that good starting point of kind of what skills do we need for this particular job is critical. Understanding and utilizing assessments, and there's a lot of out there that you can utilize to understand where people are currently performing in those roles is important so that you can identify those skill gaps, right? And then that's kind of where your training partner ecosystem comes in. So if you are an organization and you're making investments in certifications or role-based training or labs or any of the other ways that you can do that, mentorship, apprenticeships, on-job training, you want to be able to kind of know where you started and where you ended. So one of the things that we do at SkillRex is for our enterprise organizations that have large investments in the training space, we'll work with their training providers. We can inform those training providers and the workforce managers who are looking at that workforce where those critical skill gaps are as it relates back to what's important for the work role, so that they can make those smart decisions on, okay, well, we'll need to deploy this training by this training provider at this team or these individuals, right? But then you want to start to measure effectiveness of that time spent, that capital spent for those teams. So you have to kind of take the data from the results of those training courses and bring that back into your picture as well, which allows you to start to determine what skills have been yielded from that initiative and over that time. So that's a really good starting place, right? When you can actually start to say, hey, we started here and we were, 70% proficient in these skills, but through these 5, 6 training initiatives, we've gained proficiency, and we can pinpoint that to an 8% gain. That's money. That's power, right? That's knowledge that the executive team can then take back up to their, I'm sorry, the L&D team or those workforce managers can take back up to their executive teams when justifying budget, and carving out and protecting those key pieces of information. So that's one critical point. I do want to kind of foot stomp a little bit what Dr. Butler and Dree were also saying about the partnerships with commercial entities or enterprises with academia and whatever their talent pipelines are. I think now is a really great opportunity to double down on that, as we're seeing more and more of the mid to senior level talent being needed for work roles at those organizations, but also knowing that there's a retirement cliff coming, while simultaneously they've kind of cut off that pipeline. I think if you can forge those really good relationships with universities, apprenticeship programs, you name it, and really solidify it with an academic partner, you get to kind of own a bit of that talent pipeline coming in, while simultaneously, to what Dr. Butler was saying, informing the curriculum that's going to benefit you on the other side of that. And I think those companies who are going to get on that bandwagon sooner than later will benefit more 5 years from now. And you can start to measure that. You can start measuring that now on what your salary premiums are and where your skills gaps are versus kind of what you're informing and influencing through that talent pipeline, and the type of talent you're bringing in at those early salaries as you kind of work culturally to keep those folks on board for a longer term. So I think those are some of the highlights that I would kind of bring on this. But measure, measure, measure. That way you can take something back up to the board, whether that's at the academic side or on the enterprise side, so you can justify whatever actions you're taking for your organization.
I love that. It's always difficult to manage what you don't measure, and it always boggles my mind a little bit just how much time we spend measuring every other supply chain except for our talent supply chains, even though that's the largest line item in the vast majority of organizations. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. And Bill, love to get your thoughts on this topic too. When you're working with your employer partners, how are you helping them demonstrate the value of engaging with training providers, and how can organizations really see the benefit to themselves to help motivate more employers to be invested in that process?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. How do you demonstrate that type of value? And I like what is not measured cannot be improved. That's definitely a true statement. But other things that we know that are true as educators is that students who want to intern, who want to and get involved in cooperative education or apprenticeships, it is a lot cheaper to find talent if you go that route rather than rolling the dice in the economy right now. It takes a lot of money to acquire a new employee, and if they don't work out, to actually terminate that employee, that's a lot of money, right? That same amount of money, and I don't have the numbers to prove it, but I can tell you, my students, if they intern with you, more than likely that they're going to want to go to work for you. You already know this student. You've kind of helped them grow as a professional. I think allocating those funds for those summer internships and even part-time employment around year round, you're going to yield a much more productive employee in the long run. Like I said, go to one of my partners and pick up those certifications. And their value grows and grows. Sometimes the talent you're looking for is right there in your company. It could be an administrative person. It could be the janitor. It could be anybody in that company. If you give them a chance and you train them up and you give them experience, you just saved yourself. If you're concerned about the bottom line, you just saved a lot of the bottom line right there, looking for talent right under your nose. And I can't emphasize enough. I have a couple examples. I won't take a lot of time. NASA Goddard came to our school about 20 years ago, and you talk about the retirement cliff. They thought they had a retirement cliff coming. They started a astronautical engineering program at our school just to create. We're only 5 miles from them, right? to create a pipeline of talent mission operations specialists. That's one of the best examples. I have other examples, but that's an example of if you engage with an educational institution, you make a contribution, you create a talent pipeline, producing the type of entry-level workers that you need. You're going to save you're talking bottom line still, you're going to save the bottom line. So just getting engaged in areas where you know you're in need, that will pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, and I love the emphasis on the entry level pipeline there as well, because one of the things that we've been hearing a lot is that is the stage in the talent pipeline that is most likely going to be impacted by AI. As AI increasingly takes on more routine, less complex work. Historically, that's what we handed off to early career workers, right? And so, I'd be curious to get thoughts from anybody who wants to volunteer them on, how do we help to ensure that we still have a robust early career talent pipeline in the age of AI? Is it that we need to communicate the value to employers, as Bill was just mentioning? Is it that we're still going to need those entry level folks? They're just going to be doing different things than they did in the past, or is there something else we need to do to ensure that we are not chopping off that entry level rung of opportunity into the field and ensuring that we have a robust long term talent pipeline into cybersecurity? So open to anybody who wants to tackle that one.
I will say that one of the perils of these types of conversations, right, is that we all think about the possibilities of AI, right, and the possibilities of any emerging technology and what they're going to do for the industry, and it's really fun to think about what's going to come in the future. But what is happening now is we still have to keep track of the pace of change, right? And so thinking about your kind of basic principles of succession planning and how are you evaluating your skills and your roles, how are you forecasting out based on your strategic plan, all of those sorts of things still remain important. And like Dr. Butler said, we need to do that in the context of our talent pipeline and our workforce. And so it is not necessarily that entry level, the demand for entry level is going to immediately shift and it's like a light switch. It is going to be a gradual thing. And so for us to have those mid to senior level professionals, it's important for us to think strategically about what are we going to need, and let's make sure to train for that, knowing that that's an investment in the future of our organization, our company, our, public organization, so on and so forth. The other thing that I will mention too, kind of going back to the entry level roles, and Dr. Butler, you mentioned kind of within your organization, is that when we talk specifically about cybersecurity skills, it is often also very critical to upskill people who are adjacent to that, especially because cybersecurity appears in everything, right? And so, within your specific vertical, if you have somebody who is adjacent to cybersecurity who can gain some cybersecurity related skills, then they will be much more effective because they know your business, or they know the work of your organization. They'll be much more effective with a little bit of training, with the certification, with some skills training or mentorship, apprenticeship. They will be much more effective at taking on that role. And so we also need to think about emerging professionals, folks who want to switch into cybersecurity, who are in those adjacent roles, and how can they be the drivers for some of this additional talent in the security space.
Yeah, it's a great call out, and it makes me think that maybe as we move into this new world, employers are increasingly going to have the onus placed on them to help build out the workers with the skills that are going to be most valuable to them, as opposed to relying upon only external providers, or at least they'll need to have stronger collaboration with some of those external providers. And take more ownership over the development of their talent pipeline. So I realize we're getting a little bit close to time here. So in case there's any questions, I want to leave a few minutes for that. But the last question that I just want to leave with for all of you to give your thoughts on is, if there was one thing that you think we should be doing differently about how we're approaching AI and its impact on the cybersecurity workforce. Could be from the training side, could be from the assessment side, could be from the employer side, or anywhere else. What is that one thing that you think we should be doing differently in how we're approaching AI and its impact on the future of the cybersecurity workforce. So maybe Bill, I'll start with you.
Wow, you had to start with me. That's a good one. I was just thinking, and the first thing that came to my mind was there's more than one way to solve a problem. And we need to give our students the analytical skills, the curiosity, and there's another word we use, grit, just pure grit. I'm not going to let that problem defeat me kind of attitude. I think if we instill that in our students as they enter the workforce, I think that they're going to be able to survive this. If they got the communication skill, the analytical skills, they got the team, they can lead and follow. Those are very enduring qualities that will take them a long way, and they will survive the age of I think.
Double down on the skills that make us uniquely human. Right. And Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I agree 100% with Dr. Butler on leaning into the human side of it. When you ask a team, what was the hardest thing when you were kind of going through that incident or solving that problem, you usually won't get an answer of like, oh, figuring out the technical stuff. It's usually like communication or working or, cohesiveness or, understanding and thinking through the problem. So I think there's opportunity as, our tools are helping us out with technical things that the human side still will be missing and needed component to solving tomorrow's most complex problems. But the other thing I would say is you still need to start measuring things, as best as you can now. There was a GAO report put out by the government last, I think it was in September or November of 2025, and they surveyed 23 federal civilian agencies, and of those who were surveyed, 90% did not measure any kind of the effectiveness of any of their workforce initiatives. And that's like over 150 initiatives in total that are not being measured. So it's crazy to me to think that you can put in these programs, like whether it's mentorship or skilling or what have you, but you're not actually measuring the outcomes of that initiative. You don't know if that quarter, $500,000 training spend is actually yielding what you expect it to yield, or if it's getting you 2x of what you thought it was going to do. So I think we need to do a lot more of that, especially in this complex time of AI, because we do need to keep ourselves reminded that as organizations are adopting AI solutions, it's not just one solution we're adopting. It's not, oh, my company's using ChatGPT and this other one's using Claude. We're seeing a similarity of kind of that multi-cloud tendency in architecture, but use with AI generative tools. So you'll have a company who's using Gemini and Claude, or this other tool which has native AI components in it. So I think being able to really understand where the power is with specific tooling, knowing that cloud can help you out with a lot of really good stuff on the coding side, and Chat GPT can really help you out with creative thinking stuff, and how to leverage those tools in an effective and efficient way is going to pay a lot of dividends later. But you have to figure out, how to measure that successfully, with the tokenizations and the outcomes of it. It's not an easy problem, but if it wasn't easy, then nobody would be making money doing it. So, but yeah, that'd be my thoughts.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's the one thing we haven't really talked about, and I think is still not discussed as much as it probably should be, is what's the cost? It's great to say AI can do something, maybe it can, maybe it can't, but if it is not economical to leverage AI in a particular use case or a particular workflow, then we're still
Yeah.
going to need a
It might
human
be
in the loop for
cheaper
a
to
long time.
hire junior talent rather
Yeah.
than having a bunch of licenses with a bunch of tokens spinning out of it. Then, maybe your better solution is to hire somebody at $60,000 than to spend a lot of money on tokens.
Well, not to inject our work too much into this, but one thing I will say is that we recently looked at the cost of using some of the frontier models like Mythos for certain cybersecurity tasks, and just compared that against the cost it would be to have a human do the same work. And in some cases, the frontier model was either comparable cost, but had worse output. And in some cases, it cost 2 to 3 times more, still with a worse output than the human. So I think that there's still going to be an economic imperative to leverage humans in the loop for a long time to come. But Dree, love to get your thoughts. What's one thing you think we should change?
Absolutely. I think one thing to keep in mind, and that is there are no silver bullets. And so in any of this type of work, there's no silver bullets. Technology is not a silver bullet. Human skills are not a silver bullet. Organizational processes are not a skills or silver bullet. All of these things taken together can actually create change. And so what I would encourage everyone on this call and everyone in the world to do is get involved locally and also get involved beyond your local context, right? So get involved, go, if you're in the DC area, please go call Dr. Butler and make sure that you get involved with Capital Technology University. At the same time, if you are beyond that, local context, you can get involved in these collaborations with these organizations that are trying to do this connectivity work because we don't solve this problem individually within our companies and within our organizations. We solve this problem together by making sure that we are leveraging the technology effectively, leveraging it for the right reasons, and still foregrounding the importance of those human skills and that human value in all of this work.
It takes a village. So I think we only have a few minutes left, but want to at least jump in with a couple of questions that I saw come in on the chat here. So I'll start with Andrew asked a kind of a two-part question related to reaching some of those adjacent workers or people who are trying to transition into the field. So I'll open this up for any panelists who want to tackle it. But question is basically on the employer side, how do you reach some of those adjacent workers in fields that might be somehow related to cybersecurity or who are trying to pivot into the field? If you're an employer, how do you actually reach to those folks? And then the other side is on the individual side. If you're trying to pivot into cybersecurity, then how you actually ensure that you're building the skills that align with the market needs. So open that up for anybody, both on the employer side and the individual side for career transitioners. How do you reach them if you're on the employer? And if you're the transitioner, how do you ensure that you're actually building the skills necessary in this evolving landscape?
I think on the pivoter side, you really need to understand kind of what you're looking for on your team, right? There are so many adjacent professions that you can pull from if you're looking for certain kinds of skills. Like you want somebody with leadership and grit and tenacity, look to the veteran community. That is kind of what they bring to the table, generally speaking. And you can teach to the technical piece there. If the technical component isn't as important as those other, skills, then that is a really great, opportunity to do that. If you want somebody who's really great at communication and presentation, there's plenty of careers that you can kind of draw from who have great speaking or writing skills. Again, and you can train up to the other components. So I think really knowing what you need for your team at that time, and being creative about where you're looking for it is probably step number one there.
I would say too, just playing the long game within your company, within your organization, right? You're going to think of that person who would be really good for that role if you are networked within your company and if you are just talking to newer professionals, talking to other teams, and we'll think of, oh, that person, has those really great presentation skills, as Jeff said, and maybe they would be good for this role that I have hope in, right? And so maintaining that connectivity across your organization will help you identify this is a person who might want to participate. On the career pivoters and how do you reach them, it's again going back to that getting involved. There are folks who are affiliated with educational institutions. There are folks who have certifications through, for instance, ISC2, but other organizations as well. And you can find those individuals, and they have a lot of the technical skill set, but have often, kind of come with a background of a whole different career, or maybe they're veterans, maybe they were, in the field of marketing, for instance, right? And they want to switch into cyber. And so you can find those people who have that interest and who have demonstrated that interest through some sort of credential or through education, and then you can plug them into your organizations.
Yeah, I would say quickly too. When I have students who don't know what they want to do, I tell them go to work on the help desk in any company. And why do we do that? Because you meet the president all the way down to everybody knows you, everybody loves you because you're helping them. And if you have the qualities they're looking for, they're going to pull you out of that help desk and pull you into their department, and they're going to train you. And I've seen folks everywhere from physical trainers to social workers transition to cybersecurity. And the first thing I ask you, how hard-headed are you? And can you work on something for 8 hours straight without getting frustrated and giving up? You know, that's the grit. Again, you got to have a lot of grit to go into cybersecurity, but we can draw from all other communities if they're willing to put the work in, they can be successful. It's not easy. And I tell them it's not easy, but they're ready for the challenge. They can do well in this field.
Wonderful. Well, I see we have a couple more questions, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time since I realize we're just about at the top of the half hour, I suppose. But if there are any questions we didn't get to, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to connect with anybody. I'm always happy to answer more questions offline. So please feel free to reach out. I'm sure other folks on the call might be willing to as well. I won't speak for them, but always happy to try to connect with the community. So this was fantastic. Really appreciate all of the panelists for your insights and thoughts on these topics. And I will pass it back to Heather to wrap us up.
Yeah, that's it. I just appreciate all of you. Thank you for all of the insights and the sharing, and the audience for your intelligent questions. We're very much excited about AI and continuing these conversations. So keep following us, and I'm sure we'll see you on another leadership roundtable soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.